Hey everybody, welcome back to the Arts Department and the DL on Arts. I bet you're saying to yourself, where has this guy been? What happened to the channel? And where's the rest of that conversation that was promised so long ago? So long, whatever. I got sick, I got COVID, and then life, my sister got married, and like all of this stuff, and so yeah, things got delayed. My deepest apologies for those that have been waiting, but now here we are. We can continue the last of this discussion, I believe. This is a little bit of a longer one, 40 minutes or show. Yeah, it's been a while. 40 minutes or so. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap this one and then we're going to transition into the next one with whenever I get to it because stuff's been crazy. At any rate, the DL on Arts, here we go. What I hear you saying is that you imposed limits to get the progress moving forward in some regards, but then expanded in others. So your limit before was to try and finish something immediately. Now you're giving yourself more time to sit with a painting. And then your limit before was the broader palette, and now you're using a tighter palette to try and push your own skills.
My understanding of color is really like that was the thing in school. We all started with limited palettes, right? Yeah. But it was approached from the standpoint of like, well, you guys don't know what you're doing yet. Yeah. So you can't use all those colors. You only get burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and white, and maybe a yellow. Yeah. You know, or something like that. And then slowly they would add one more color to the palette. Yeah. It was not approached from the standpoint of like seasoned artists can do this too. Right. You know, because and we can all point back to Zorn, right? The Zorn palette of what is it? Ivory black, titanium white. I believe it was yellow ochre, and I've heard a mix of either cad red medium or alizarin crimson. I've heard both, and I don't know.
The book from the show.
I don't know if they list the palette in that book.
Oh, okay.
But either way, basically a red, a muted yellow. He didn't use like cad yellow. It was almost always a yellow ochre pale, I believe. Okay. Ivory black, which is a cool black, and white, because then you mix white with the ivory black and put that next to a red and it looks blue. And the benefit of that is that you have instant harmony no matter what you mix together. You mix the yellow ochre with the black and some white, you've got green. And you can use the black with the red to get into the purples and darks and all that stuff. But it also allows you to really design the color palette of the image, and obviously, there are tons of amazing artists that use a full palette. Sure. You look at like Jeremy Licking's palette, and it's a full palette, and he has complete and utter control over his palette.
Yes, he does.
No matter what he wants to do on the painting. But that's skill and mileage and
just being a badass.
Yeah. And so, but I think like because on the illustration side, we are very into like efficiency, and it's like, okay, well, why put these colors out on my palette if they're not going to factor in to the painting? Now sometimes, so what I'm finding with the current piece that I'm working on is I started with a limited palette, right? I'm going to be adding more colors in as I go because I'm realizing that some of the luminosity that I want, I can't get that with the current colors I have. right? Especially when you get into high value, you start to lose all the chroma unless you are working with some high value colors. So when I get into the cools and the skin tones at a very high value, then I think what I'm using lamp black isn't going to cut it. Even if I put just a little bit of that in the white, it doesn't have the luminosity that a manganese blue would have, you know, or a cerulean blue, because those are already high value colors. So the chroma can handle adding white.
Yeah.
And but that's okay, because I'm like, all right, I can treat this first pass over the whole thing almost as like a second underpainting, right? And then glaze colors in, paint opaque where I really want some more luminosity, because I want her skin to like glow. The rest of the painting is fairly dark, you know, like all of it is probably 50% and darker, you know. Okay. In fact, most of it probably won't even hit the 50% value range.
Okay, so you're keying dark and then having her as a hot
like
spot.
Very, very light skin in that Waterhouse kind of style.
Okay.
You know, so, but I know that to get the luminosity that I want at that high value, I'm going to have to bring in some other colors in the palette.
But you started pushing your color sense through limiting your palette. Is that a tool that you would recommend?
Absolutely. I think it just gives a better understanding of what you can do with a color, but also it makes you a lot more aware of when and where to add more color, right? Because you see, like, how much can you get with just these few colors, you know, and do as much as you can with that, and then see where will the painting benefit from adding more colors. Will it benefit? Maybe it doesn't need it, you know, or maybe it does. Maybe to achieve whatever goal you had in mind, you know, you really want some punch in this part of the painting, then cool, add some more colors. But at least then you're doing it by choice and not just because they're on your palette. You know.
Yeah, and I it's interesting to me because, you know, as this relates to pushing yourself, this actually relates to what the feedback that you gave me regarding my professional work, and that I can limit my palette or limit my palette and at the same time expand my palette because I am limiting my palette. Right. So
expand your understanding of color by limiting your colors.
Right. So I took that to heart, and the latest things that I've been doing have been focused in other areas that I wouldn't normally go to, at least in the professional sense, in the day job stuff, in the evening streams and stuff like that. I'm all over the place because it's my playground. It's like, and there's definitely where I've been pushing to learn new programs, new ways of approaching old things, new for me, right? And new approaches to color, new approaches. I want to say primarily new approaches to color and composition or paint handling, right? So I haven't been focused as much on changing up my shape design or anything like that.
Right.
But there's definitely more thought about how do I use color in different ways to tell a story, to further my own skills. But primarily, it's about putting more arrows in the quiver. And it's, for me, it's kind of when I'm thinking about doing what I do with intent and making things bigger, better for myself, I'm all over the place. Like, I don't really have a specific push. I go, that looks interesting. Is that something that I want to try to accomplish? And then I think about it. I maybe put together an image, a single image, and then give it an attempt. Probably fail. Try another one.
Sure.
Maybe take it further, and just to get a little bit more understanding, more understanding. Pushing that the understanding is more about learning new programs, essentially new mediums, right?
Yeah.
And then expanding the ways that I can do what I already do, right? But that being said, I've been thinking pretty heavily recently about ways to incorporate everything into a bigger kind of personal narrative, I want to say. Like,
what do you mean by everything?
Well, I mean everything. All of the things that I do. This, the music, animation, even the thoughts on the mental space and emotional space of artists and the well-being that keeps us producing, as well as thoughts on the trajectory of the world and the trajectory of the, like, I guess what I've been thinking of is like how to turn it into something that is greater than the sum of its parts, right? And this goes into a realm that is new space for me, because for what I'm thinking about is I want to say that it's filmmaking in some regard, but at the same time it is trying to use film, animation, music in a new way for me, and I don't know that it's necessarily a new way for everybody out there, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that experiment on the same types of thoughts and ideas and that sort of stuff. But there is, for me, I'm looking at the fact that I've learned photography / cinematography, and I've learned music making, and I've learned animation, and I've learned 3D, and I've learned all of these different things, sound recording and all of it. And just starting to ask the question, why? What was that for?
Right. No, I mean, every time I think about like, I really want to get into digital sculpting because, I miss doing 3D stuff, and I, digital sculpting wasn't a thing when I was doing 3D animation in school, and then I think, why? What's the application? Like, it's fun, and it expands my brain because you're working in 3D space, and that's always a good thing, for an artist of any kind. But at the same time, like, why? What's the application for it? And in some cases, you might say, well, there isn't really an application, so is that the best use of my time? Or in other cases, you might say, all right, well, I have all these different skill sets. Now, what can I do with them? Is there something that can be done that doesn't just let them fall by the wayside?
And that's what I've been thinking on pretty heavily about. I actually sat on a call with the wonderful Blessed Sariana the other night for a couple hours. And we talked and talked and talked. Actually, no, I take that back. We did not sit on a call. She was visiting.
I was going to say, I'm like...
So we sat here and talked about this. And it was kind of a very organic... It was an organic epiphany for me, because we had started by watching Into the Spider-Verse. And you look at what that film is, and it's an amalgamation and an integration of many different art forms. And then I started talking about Alberto.
I was going to say, but Alberto's a genius, so you can't really, we can't hold ourselves out,
No, but I started talking about him, and then in doing that, I was like, well, here, check this out, and then went and did some research with her here, and we were talking about him some more, and then he was talking about art and the temporary nature of it, and then digital art and how it's ongoing and all of these different things, and that just in me kind of sparked that desire to take all of these skills that I've worked on for so long and see if there's a way for me to integrate them all into something that is that pushes forward in a way that is unexpected for me and maybe unexpected for others. I don't know yet. Yeah. Because there's a thought behind that, which is it's the temporal nature of everything is so interesting. Yes, we love oil painting. Very temporary medium. It needs it needs special care, it needs special storage and all that stuff. And get into what could I deliver to the world, to people, to fans that wouldn't be temporary. That would be something that they could hold and appreciate forever. That won't die in any way, shape, or form. You know, you get a print from an artist, leave it on a wall for 10 years and look at it versus, look at the digital image of it, and it's a different thing altogether.
No, that's why I thought it was so interesting that, like, Alberto, one of the first things he does when he finishes a painting is he scans it in. So that he has a representation of it that's the closest it can be to what it was when he finished it, because it will change over the years, no matter what. I mean, you can keep them in, dry, dark storage, but every now and then you have to bring it out because to bring some of the color back, because literally the colors will get more muted by sitting in the dark because there is no light to excite the electrons in the color. So you have to then bring it out, let it sit out in the light for a while before those colors come back to what they're supposed to be.
That's trippy.
As opposed to keeping it in direct light, which will fade the colors permanently. So it's an interesting thing, and that's where, when I say, like, doing something with conviction, we can look at Alberto's paintings, and I'm sure there are people that on some level would want to say, like, again, they're kind of trite because, a lot of nudity and stuff, but he does them with such conviction. He's walking his talk, and he is living his values. And so you can't really argue that. When you see it in a painting, you can't really argue that. So that's why it's like, okay, the chances of coming up with something completely new for the world are infinitesimal. What's that word? So minuscule. So minuscule. Like, the chances are pretty much none. But we can at least then do whatever we're doing to the best of our abilities,
and I don't think that the world constantly has to have new. I feel like what you bring to it through your own particular voice is what you bring to it, and it's going to be new because of that. It may harken back to your influences, like the music that I make. I do it because I don't sell it. I do it because when I'm doing it, it feels good. I'm doing it because it's a form of expression, and I feel like the same with what I am going to be putting out, whatever that ends up being, because these things take sometimes years to kind of come together,
to develop.
I mean, the last time I had an idea like this is how I arrived at the oil painting thing. And that was when I was still working at Nickelodeon. I mean, and it took, like 2 years before I was like, oh, here it is. Here's here's the basis of how I'm trying to express. Yeah. And then I started to investigate those things. And now I'm at a point where it's mature enough that I can have a process and know that this plus this gets me to this end result, and this end result is pleasing to me in a way that feels good along the way, and a way that presents a final product that I am proud of for one reason or another. Yeah. And I think that ultimately the conviction for me is investigating the thoughts and concepts that I want to investigate within my own personal art, and not worrying about the external, and doing it in a way that is fun along the way, right? Yeah. Because that is ultimately why we do what we do. Yeah. Because we enjoy the process of it. We enjoy whatever it is, doing the photography that's the reference to the images, doing the recording that is the videos, doing the music, doing the painting, doing the drawing, doing the research. All of that stuff feeds the beast, so to speak, right? Yeah. So it's something that we can put our limited time on this earth into and feel like we've achieved something, even if it's just for ourselves. Even if it's just for our own well-being. Yeah. Right?
I mean, in a sense, like I think that's almost, at least when it comes to art, that's almost all we can really worry about, right? Is doing it for our own well-being, even if we are sharing it out in the world and all that stuff. Because otherwise, if you are, and we share it because if we get something out of it, we assume, rightfully so, that someone else will too, right? If it means something to us, it will mean something to somebody else, right? And it might only mean something to one other person. Maybe your mom loves the painting or whatever.
Should see how many Daniel drawings I have. Man, just gotta constantly support that
guy. But chances are there are going to be people that also get something out of it, right? Yeah. And because I think if we start worrying about how many other people are getting something out of it, then that does start to lead us toward like, oh, I got to do something edgy and new and for all of them, The problem is nowadays, new lasts for about the space of time it just takes for a post to go viral. And,
okay, done.
And then it's not new anymore, and by the end of the week, some film studio is already like, making casting calls to turn whatever into some stupid, who knows what,
commodity.
And so I think the benefit of just, again, staying true to yourself and doing what you love doing and doing it to the best of your ability is that, I mean, we'll just take painting as an example. A well done painting is pretty timeless. Yeah. Whereas just because something is new and edgy doesn't mean it's going to last at all. Yeah. And so we put all our energy into consciously trying to come up with something new. It's a lot of wasted energy. Yeah. Because it's literally, it's going to be new as long as it takes you to, post your new edgy painting or whatever the fuck it is you're doing, know? Yeah. And then if it's successfully edgy, cool. Now you're going to get 10 people ripping you off, 5 of which probably have a much bigger following and more connections, and then it's like all of a sudden they're the new ones, and
you're the
like
imitator.
Yeah, but then it's not new anymore because now it's everywhere.
Right.
You know.
I'm thinking about Evan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of people that you know have just like consciously yeah. And it's what's great is that you still know it's him when you see his work.
Yeah, we're Evan
Amundsen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which is great. Like, you know when it's someone just ripping him off.
Yeah.
Because again, like, he has so much credibility behind his stuff, the research that he puts in to all, because it's what he loves. He loves history. He loves reading about historical battles and like picking apart the strategy, and he loves reading about historical armaments and all like, he loves that, and it shows.
Right.
You know, whereas other people, I think a lot of other people are looking at some of the success that he's gotten from that, whether it's the number of followers or the jobs he's gotten to work on, and are basically using it as a cookie cutter process. Oh, if I do this, this, and this, then I'll have that same kind of success.
Right.
You're never going to be as good as him because he fucking loves it.
Right.
You don't.
That's his passion.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, cool. Take some of the techniques and stuff from another artist that work for you, but you better like be doing what you're passionate about, because the difference will show.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was about to say prior to talking about Evan that we it sounds a lot like what we were talking about was fine art, right? Because what we're saying is, you know, stay true to your passions, stay true to the things that drive you, and produce content that is pleasing to you, that you have fun with along the way, right? And a majority of the time in the production environment, it's really hard to do, right?
Absolutely.
But then, I guess Evan is kind of an example of somebody that stayed true to his passions and the things that drives him, that succeeded in the production art environment.
Right. Because like they hire him because of what he does.
Right.
And, you know, and they actually, but even then, like, he has talked about, like,
it's a job.
Like, yeah, it's still a job, and I would have done some of these things a little different, but, you know, I had fun, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's also where it's like, I always hate to say fine art and commercial art, because, I mean, let's be honest, like, fine art is the most commercial of any of the art. It is.
Yeah.
You fucking whatever, slap something down on the table, and then you just come up with a bullshit line to sell it. Like, you're a used car salesman, you know, that's selling a you know, Pinto as a Cadillac, and like that is a lot of what. Not everyone, obviously, there are plenty of legit artists, but so many of them, they are literally doing it to make money.
Yeah. That's what I find very interesting about some of the arguments coming against NFTs and it being just a cash grab and everything. It's like, dude,
for some people it is.
Look at the history of gallery work. It is
and that's what I hate it when people rail on artists for wanting to make money, make a living at what they do.
You're a sellout.
I'm just like,
I just want to eat.
Yeah, you're like, dude, I'm trying to have a life. Like, what else am I supposed to do? You know, like, I'm gonna next time I take my car into work on it, I'm gonna tell them they're total sellouts.
Yeah, right.
They should just be working on my car because that's what they love to do.
Right. It's funny because I remember being young, just young punk rock metalhead dickhead, and like a band would like release something that got popular. I'm like, those fucking sellouts, man. Those guys don't know shit about metal. Like, dude, come on.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know how to differentiate between fine art versus when we say commercial art, usually on some level, we're talking about something that's commissioned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether you're working full-time or freelance, you're still not executing your vision.
Right.
Right. Or sometimes you are, but it's not your project, your property.
Yeah.
You're executing your vision for someone else's property, and they still get to say yay or nay.
Right.
So it's a commission piece on some level. So, I mean, that's kind of the difference. But then there's that mid-range too, where you're doing representational work, whether that's portraits, landscapes, or in my case fantasy paintings that are not commissioned. They're not fine art. I don't know where that lands exactly. I don't know if we have a term for that kind of it. That's why I'll say just sort of representational, because it is. So but I hate to say fine art versus commercial art, because fine art is so fucking commercial.
Yeah. I really don't think there's a difference. The difference is the people you're selling to,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. The difference is how many zeros are on the price tag.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try just adding a couple of zeros to the painting when I'm done, and then coming up with some bullshit line about what it represents.
Daniel loves fine art. I guess my outlook at this point, I used to hate fine art, but my outlook at this point is get your career, man.
I don't like it. It has a purpose, though. Yeah. It absolutely has a purpose, but obviously it's never a good thing to talk shit about an entire culture or genre simply because a few of them are dipshits.
Yeah. I mean, how many illustrators are dipshits? How many,
No, and we talked before about the validity of fine art and the purpose of it, right? But that's why so much of it is kind of bullshit, because it literally is like, is this art? Is this art? Is this art? No? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about this? Is this art?
Yeah. So if I had to wrap this up, I would say to people, give yourself healthy limits on the ways that you're producing your work, and then at other times take those limits away and try new and interesting things. So Daniel limited himself to push forward, and I expanded myself to push forward. There isn't any cookie cutter way to do this. You need to find the things that work for you to push your aesthetic further, to push your skills further, and to continue to feel like you're having a good time, to feel like you're producing valid work, and to feel like you are feeding the quest for artistic knowledge.
Yeah, but I think even within your expansion, you were still limiting yourself within each facet, right?
Sure.
So when you jumped into Procreate, you weren't trying to use every aspect of Procreate. You were trying to first get a feel for the brush engine, and how that works, you know. And so I think it's important when we are trying to expand our knowledge and our skill set as we push into these different areas. I think it is important to kind of limit ourselves simply so we don't get overwhelmed. Right? Because otherwise, if I were to try and do an entire big painting with I'm going to change the way I do shape design, I'm going to change the way I do lighting design, I'm going to change the way I approach color, I'm going to change my process in oil painting, I'm going to change the way I lay the paint down, it is too much, and you'll end up with a shitty painting and you won't know what to do to fix it. Right. And so that's where I think the limitations are important. push yourself. Like I'm pushing myself to really use the color palette in a different way, you know, and do a process overall, more layers of process than I've done in the past. Mm-hmm. Within that, though, I'm like, okay, I still got dragons and the way that I draw and paint dragons. I've still got the types of figures designed in the way that I would normally do. Some of it with the shapes, I've been really trying to get more weight in my figures. That's something that I felt was like kind of lacking, and it came from just having to knock out sketches.
Naturalistic weight.
Yeah.
Feeling like it exists.
And some of it is like, it's no secret that I draw scantily clad women a lot, but it's easy as a man to like unconsciously idealize stuff in a way that when you look at it, you're like, it's not like, it's clearly idealized in a like non-realistic way. Mm-hmm. And if you're not aware of it, then you're just going to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I was looking at that stuff, and it's like, on so many levels, I've always felt like I don't need to idealize stuff, because if I look at a beautiful woman in real life, she's beautiful. Right. And not everything is quote unquote perfect. Right. Whatever the fuck that means. Right? Yeah. And so that's where I'm trying to get more realistic weight in the figure overall. In a way that, because I also feel like that calls less attention to things. No, it does. Like, yeah. If you have a figure that's supposed to be in a fantasy setting, that's whatever, a medieval based world, and she looks like she has a boob job, sure, that calls a certain attention to it. And I can tell, when people are looking at the wrong reference for their fantasy paintings, because I'm like, I don't think silicone was around with red zone yet. Like, I think of her because a lot of people tend to draw her, and one of her traits is large boobs.
Huge tracts of land.
And so when people are looking up reference, they don't pay attention to, like, are they naturally large, or are they fake large?
Augmented.
Yeah. But you can see it.
Yeah.
So
I think...
limitations.
Right. Limitations are good. But here's something that and to put a button on this, and give yourself limitations, but take the time for introspection to look towards a target and understand that you're going in a certain direction to achieve certain things, to broaden your understanding in those avenues, and use that as a focus so that you're not so broad that you become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Cool. Good talk, Daniel.
Likewise.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Friends, thanks for tuning in to the DL on Arts. Thanks for being here and listening to us talk. I don't know how many episodes this is going to end up being, but we'll be back with more in the future. Thanks for the support. You can find all of our social medias in the About section below. Daniel streams occasionally on Twitch. I am Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on YouTube and Twitch at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Click around, give us all the follows on social media. Let us know your thoughts, let us know your feelings. Let us know about your progress in art and your journey and how you are bettering yourselves doing what you do. That's about it from the DL on Arts.
Keep on painting.
Good times.